You will run into bad people, bad actors, shitty situations, bad advice, people that want to embezzle from you, steal from you, do harm to you, people that want to defame you and degrade you. I mean, it's everywhere.
Welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
All right. Hi there. This is Jeff Barnes, and welcome back to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, then you can see it's a little bit different setup right now, and it's just me. Okay. We are just going to be going into this podcast talking about a whole bunch of different things going forward. You know, we've had incredible guests on the show, and we're going to continue to have incredible guests. However, there's a lot of things I've realized when it comes to doing these podcasts that people want a little bit more information, direct how-tos, strategy, tactics, things like that. And while we talk a lot about our guests and give them a lot of great information, or they give a lot of great information, we found that our listeners are really looking for something that's a little bit more actionable, something they can actually do stuff with. So we're going to transition the format of this podcast. And hopefully this has become a lot more valuable, or will become a lot more valuable for you, the watcher, the viewer, the listener. And I'm going to be providing a lot of information based off of all the information we get in our network, my experience, my expertise in helping companies get started, raising capital, exiting, and so on. And we're going to talk about a lot of strategies. We're going to get into tactics. We're going to get into very important things that people need to understand when it comes to raising money, leveraging that capital to grow your business, getting ready for an exit, exiting your business, and then investing as someone who wants to be an angel investor or a private investor. So there's a lot of ground to cover here. And what I found is that there's so many podcasts out there that talk about the hurdles and the headaches of growth and, you know, the visionary ideas and the technologies and all the really cool things that people are doing in their business. And then there's some that are talking about, you know, alpha and beta and what do you do in the stock market and, you know, prop firms and trading and all these different things. There's a lot of great information out there. But what I've found is that there's not a lot of great information for the actual roll up your sleeves, get to work and do the dirty work. You see, most people still think that this process of raising money or growing a business is, well, you know, that's not that hard anymore. And it could be anything but the truth, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. Let me put it that way. The fact is that starting and scaling a business is still just as hard, if not harder today than it ever has been. And why is that? Well, because there's way more competition. We've lowered the barriers to entry to practically zero, right? You can just go to your local library and get on a computer and start from there. Or you just have a phone and an influencer can start their own channel and they can start filming themselves. And eventually, if they have a good enough message and a good enough process, they will win. And that means competition is fierce. It also means that there are more people entering into the marketplace, right? Because that barrier to entry is so low, there's so many more people trying to get into this space, which means more noise and confusion. If you have a great product, it doesn't really matter anymore, right? Because somebody can knock that product off. There can be alternatives to that product, or no one can find out about your product because it's so hard to market and get seen in so many different ways. So we're going to be talking about all of these things and how it relates to building a really valuable company. See, at the end of the day, we want to build everything we do with an exit in mind. All right. So John Warlow talks about Built to Sell. Great book. You need to go read it if you are a founder or if you're an investor in a company. You need to read that book. You need to read a bunch of books, and I'll talk about a lot of them going forward on the show. But the thing that I think is really important is that you always start with the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey, principle right there. Always start with the end in mind. That means you need to know where you're going and where you're taking your business, your idea, your investment, and so on. You can't just say, okay, well, I'm just going to put my money out there and I hope eventually it's going to come back to me. Or I'm just going to start a business and eventually maybe we'll figure this thing out a few years down the road and we'll structure it the right way and then we'll package it up to sell and all that stuff. See, I've worked with literally thousands of business owners, guys. And as a result, I get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. I get to see the coolest things, the craziest things, the dumbest things, the smartest things, you name it. They come across our desk. Why? Because, well, our company's been here for 28 years. People come to us because they need help raising capital. They need help growing their business. They're looking for support. They're looking for coaching. They're looking for tools. They're looking for strategy. They're looking for all these different things. Why? Because it's challenging to run a business. Anybody who tells you it's not doesn't run a real business, okay? They really don't. And what do I mean by a real business? Now, I'm going to offend a few people on this show. That's totally fine. I don't have any problem offending. You can leave nasty comments if you want. Here's the thing. A real business is one that runs without you. Okay. A real business is one that you do not need to show up day to day and do the operations. You don't need to be giving orders and barking orders at people and telling them what to do. You don't need to have your finger on the pulse every single day of every little thing that's happening. That's a real business, a business that can run without you. Okay. A business that requires you to be there every day is a job. It means you're self-employed. Okay. And sometimes you have the worst boss when you're self-employed, right? Let's face it. People don't like to look in the mirror and nag and scold themselves, right? Or listen to the berating that they're taking inside their own brain, right? They don't like to hear what's happening between those two ears of theirs from their own boss, which happens to be them. So the fact is that growing a business is challenging. It's not fun. It's not easy. I mean, it can be fun, but it's normally boring, right? The most boring thing you can do is generally the thing that's going to make you the most successful. It's showing up and just doing the job every single day, right? The ditches don't dig themselves. Not yet anyway. There are robots that can do this. But the fact is, the analogy still remains. If you don't get up and start putting in the effort and putting in the elbow grease and digging that ditch and going and getting it done, you're not going to build a successful company. And then eventually you build a company that runs without you. Okay. That's a successful business. That's a real business. Okay. That's what we're talking about. How do you get there and how do you get to a potential exit? And let's face it, when we're talking about exits, you have to have a real business to actually get a real exit. Now, you can build a cool technology and get to a really good exit because there's another company that wants to buy that. That's totally fine. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm talking about building real businesses, using real capital, and getting into a potential exit. And if you are the investor on that, what you need to be looking out for when you put your money into these companies, because there's a lot that goes into that side as well. Okay, so I've been rambling on for a little bit. I know that there's, a lot of talking points here, a lot of things that I can be going down. But I wanted to give you guys that sense for what are we transitioning this podcast into? Because let's face it, we need to get to the how-to. We need to get to all this stuff. And I'm sick and tired of selling courses, to be quite honest. It takes a ton of time and energy to build a course. I'd rather just give you the information and give you resources and tools you can go use and find rather than building courses and trying to sell courses to you. Okay. So hopefully you love this. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, give us comments. That's what the algorithm wants to see is engagement. They want to see that you're commenting on stuff. Let us know if you like this podcast going forward. Again, we've had a lot of views on our podcast, which is great. A lot of great downloads on the audio stuff, whether it's Spotify or Apple or Google or whatever. And I appreciate that. However, the comments we get are, so what do we do with this, right? At the end of the day, what are we going to actually do with this information? It's great that we're getting the information, but how is it relatable? So every episode that I shoot, I'm going to have at least one really key concept that you can take away from the episode so that you can go implement that. And now this is going to be spread across business owners and investors. Now, it could be family office investors. It could be just high net worth individuals. It could be limited partners and funds, you name it. But we're going to be talking about the tactical how-to and what you should be doing on a regular basis to build your wealth, protect your wealth as an investor and a business owner, and set yourself up for long-term success. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. And I will be the first to admit that I have failed more times than I care to count, and I have lost more money than most people make in a lifetime. Okay. And I can go into some of those stories and we'll talk about, my journey and how I got to where I am today, because it was not easy. It was painful. And I am one of those guys that, if you've ever read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, they have this cool thing called the Why operating system. Now you can take an assessment. Maybe I'll find the link and I'll drop it in the show notes. And with that, you can actually go find out about what it is that makes you tick, right? Why do you do things the way that you do them? Not just why do you do things? Why do you do things the way that you do them? One of the things I found out about myself is that I'm what's considered a better way type of person. I'm always trying to improve on things and make them better, which means when somebody would give me instruction and tell me what to do, whether it was a coach, a mentor, an advisor, going to school, getting education, training, listening to experts, I always had to try and make it better. That is the dumbest thing you can possibly do, right? Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. Follow the clues. Sometimes just do exactly what the other person tells you to do. It's that easy. It can be that easy. But when you're someone like me, who sadly thinks you're smarter than other people, you don't do what you're told to do, and you end up doing the dumb thing, which is trying to improvise and improve on something that's already working. Don't do that. There's no need to improve and improvise on something that's already working if you're not already successful. Okay. Take the lessons that you've been given and use those lessons. And that's what this podcast is going to be here for. I want I'm going to share with you the stupidest things that have happened in my career, the business deals that have gone south, the money that I've lost, as well as the wins. Like the wins are kind of fun, right? Like when I get on the phone at my kid's bus stop when they're, 6, 7 years old, and I'm wiring $100,000 back and forth between Chase Bank and American Express, like that feels really cool when you're paying off your credit card on a daily basis, wiring 100K a day. That's a pretty awesome feeling, right? And yes, that actually did happen to me, and that was a great thing. Unfortunately, that business went right off a cliff as well, so we'll talk about that at some point. The fact is that I want to provide meaningful, valuable information to you that you can use and do something with, regardless of where you are in that journey. Because everything that we're going to be talking about is how do you build that long term generational wealth? How do you create that plan that's going to set you up for life? And I focus on business. Okay. Business can be so many different things. We're not going to talk about one vertical. We have guests that are going to come in and talk about different verticals and things like that. But I've been involved in thousands of businesses, literally thousands, and I can back that all up. There's plenty of proof for that because of what I've been doing for the last 25 years of my life. But it does not mean I started all those businesses or that I owned pieces of all those businesses. Let me be very clear. I've just been in these businesses and seen how they operate and worked with them and all of that. So I'm going to give you those insights that I can use from my past, my experience, my expertise, my training, my education, my failures, and all of that, and try to impart practical wisdom on how you can actually take business and turn that into a life plan that can help you generate wealth long term and create generational wealth. This is one of those things like when I talk about starting with the exit in mind, my exit is 2, 3, 4 generations down the line. Okay. I'm not thinking about myself, my wife, even my kids. I have to think about what's it going to take to have one of those family legacies that continues to survive and thrive well after I'm gone from this planet. What does that look like? What does that mean? How do we do that? How do we set that up properly? Because that means that it's a lot more than just business. It's a lot more than just making money today. That's what a lot of people are thinking about. Like, I need to make money today. That's great. But then you have the next generation. Like, how do you get your kids involved? Because if the kids didn't go through the struggle, they're going to fail in business, right? They're going to lose all their money. It's proven time and again. You don't want that. Let's just say the kids come in. That's great. But they don't know how to train their kids and their kids don't come into the business, or they take all the money and they blow it. It happens time and time again. So how do we fix that? How do we make sure we stay on track for that? So my exit planning is how do I keep my family lineage, my legacy from having to go back into squalor at some point by building out generational plans that will stand the test of time, will help keep the freedom and autonomy that I covet so dearly in my family so that they can thrive and survive in a way that maybe I wasn't able to in my life, right? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. There's plenty of examples of families out there that can do this, but we start with business. We use business to get going. We use that as the foundation, the cornerstone to eventually building the wealth. And then how do you protect the wealth? There's plenty of predators out there. I've been sued. I've had plenty of people come after me telling me that I need to give them money for whatever reason. There's just a lot of bad people out there, right? People that would rather spend more time and energy trying to scam other people than just putting in the work and, generating revenue and building something valuable. So we're going to talk about all that stuff, okay? Because it does happen. All the bad things. If you are in business, if you amass any amount of success, if you accumulate any amount of wealth at any point in your life, you will run into bad people, bad actors, shitty situations, bad advice, people that want to embezzle from you, people that want to steal from you, people that want to do harm to you, people that want to defame you and degrade you. I mean, it's everywhere. Okay. And there's a saying in Australia, which is you never want to be the tallest poppy. And what they are saying and referring to is that when that poppy in the field starts to get to be the tallest one, guess which one gets cut down first? So it's the same size as all the other poppies. So the field looks beautiful. You want to be the tallest poppy. All right. Let me be honest. You want to be the one that goes out there and succeeds in life, right? Life is a game. Let's have fun playing it. It's a lot of work to do it right, but let's have fun doing it. But that means because you're the tallest poppy, everyone else is going to try and cut you down, right? We use this analogy of the crabs in the bucket. And crabs in a bucket means if you had one crab and you put it in a bucket and it's able to actually reach the top, it will very quickly and easily find the top, grab itself, pull itself out, and get out of that bucket. On the other hand, you put even one more crab in that bucket. That other crab does not want to see you succeed at all. And as a result, they are going to stop you from getting out of that bucket. So why am I telling you that? Why am I telling you about the crabs, the tallest poppy, and so on? Well, it's because if you want to achieve success, whether as an investor, putting a little bit of money into a new company, as a business owner, trying to scale your company to an exit, or as an entrepreneur trying to start something, raise capital, and then eventually make it something huge, you have to be mentally prepared for the shitstorm that is coming your way when you start to achieve any modicum of success. I have had former business partners yell at me, scream at me, be atrocious to me because I wouldn't kowtow to what they wanted to do. All right. So they talk about getting a partner in business is like getting married. It's not, luckily. It's not quite that bad, but I'm sorry, or good. I'm married. I love my wife. Don't take that the wrong way. But my point is when it goes south, I've been divorced as well. I've had to go through an actual divorce. That was way worse than having to break up a business. So anybody that tells you that, it's the same thing, it's not. All right, emotionally and, functionally, but it's damn close. And so when you are considering taking on a partner, you have to realize that at the end of the day, if you do not have aligned mission, vision, values, if you do not feel like or if you guys are not on the same page when it comes to what comes first, myself or the business, then you're going to have a falling out. And when you have that falling out, it's very painful. It's very frustrating. And you can't protect yourself from everything, but you need to be mentally prepared to withstand that. So again, I'm rambling on a little bit in this episode, but I want you to understand that if you keep coming back and you keep listening to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, you're going to learn a lot more about, the ins and outs of running a business, of raising capital, the things you should be looking for, the things you should be doing. Because let's face it, like I can't teach somebody the emotional aspects of running a business and going through this process. I can help you understand that it's coming, but you don't gain the wisdom without the experience. So I can give you the knowledge to prepare you for these things. And then when you go implement them, you will eventually get the experience, which turns you into a very wise person. The wisdom comes from actually experiencing the stuff that I'm talking about. I really hope that I can help you. I hope that you're enjoying this. I know I'm ranting a little bit today, but I'm looking forward to giving you all the ins and outs of, raising capital, investing in private companies, finding off-market opportunities, scaling businesses, exiting those businesses, and building generational wealth plans, right? That's why it's Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. By the way, we are going to be talking about acquiring and investing in companies. We do that in our company. We do that at our club. If you want to learn more about our private investment club, that's mastermindinvestmentclub.com. We'll put that in the show notes. That's how we get people who want to learn more about all this stuff and go really deep with us into, incredible topics where you can't even imagine the stuff that's available to us once you get to a certain level of success and what's available to just anyone out there if you choose to look, but you have to be looking in the right rooms. I'm going to be uncovering as much of that as I possibly can. Okay. The stuff that I'm allowed to talk about without getting myself into the trouble with the SEC or FINRA or IRS or anything like that. All right. So stick around. Again, smash that like button, give us a subscribe, let us know you love us. And as always, go ahead and put in the show, in the questions, comments, anything you would love to see or hear us talk about here on Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. And if there's a guest you'd like me to interview, we will still be doing that from time to time. So let us know and we'll go ahead and get that done too. All right. Again, my name is Jeff Barnes, Chairman, CEO of Angel Investors Network. This is the Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next time. Take care.